Hi and welcome. My name is William K. Wesley, and I am honored to hang out with you guys again. Well, if this is your first time seeing one of my videos, welcome. And if you've been here before, welcome back. We're going to spend the next few moments sharing some things that will help you and your family move forward financially. Today's topic is credit, but before we do that, quick background. I've been in the financial services industry over 20 plus years. I've been a bank branch manager, an investment education manager. I've also been an investment advisor. In the course of a number of these conversations, I've had folks who ask me what's the most important thing, and we talked about that in the last video. The most important single financial thing you can do to change your financial circumstance and reduce financial stress is actually setting up a budget. But one of the second most important things is credit. Right? We live in an environment where credit is a critical component of your financial success. Now, you may be able to save $1 million if you live in San Francisco and you need to put that $1 million down to buy a house, but most of us are going to have to use credit. We're going to hustle all we can and build up that 10% of that million or that 10% of that 250,000, wherever you live in the country. There's still ideas anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15, 20%. So at some point, we're going to save that money, and then we use that money as the down payment. And we're going to go somewhere to a bank, to a mortgage company, and say, hey, will you cover the rest? And that is called getting credit. So we're going to break credit down, walk through some of the scenarios. It's obvious why it's important. And by the way, I'm not suggesting we all need to go out and get credit and run up tons of credit. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is if you are going to use credit, one, fundamentally understand what it is. Two, see what you can do to use as little of it as possible because there's a cost connected to it. And three, try to have the best credit score possible because that allows you to reduce the interest rate, which is the cost of credit. Okay, so, and I know folks who are in like the FIRE movement and things like that where they're saying let's pay it all off and all of that and do the best you can to pay it off. But if you need to use it, take advantage of some of these tips. So let's start with the FICO score. The FICO score, it's Fair Isaac's company or something. They're out of Marin County, and that is pretty much the standard that most organizations use when they determine whether or not you keep your financial promises. This is simply about the ability of you keeping your financial promises. So the FICO score, it's 5 key components. It's only 5. Those are the major components of the FICO score. In fact, 3 of those components represent 80% of the FICO score. So the first and biggest component of the FICO score calculation, again, the credit score, and by the way, you can have as low as 350 and you can have as high as 850. You have to work pretty hard to get a 350, and you actually have to work pretty hard to get an 850. Most people are somewhere in the middle. A lot of folks have done very, very well, and they monitor their credit and they keep things going there in the 8s. But the average score is probably around 690 to about 720. Okay. Now, what are the key 5 components? First, it's very obvious. Payment history. How do you keep your financial promises? Do you pay late? Do you pay on time? Whatever you do, 35% of your overall FICO score is based on how you pay. So that's the biggest single component. The next one is not so obvious. This one represents 30% of your overall score, and this is credit utilization. And what that simply means is how much of your available credit are you using? So let's say if you have a $10,000 credit limit and you've charged $1,500 worth of stuff, you've used 15% of your available credit. And in general, you want your credit utilization to be below 20, ideally between, below 30, but 20 is even better. And what it simply says to a potential creditor, someone who's potentially considering giving you a loan or financing a car or financing a house, it's telling them that you probably have backup resources. What do I mean? Let's say if you had a credit utilization of 98% on your $10,000, meaning you've charged $9,800 of your $10,000. Well, if you've charged that much, there's a real good perception that you probably don't have an emergency fund, you probably don't have a backup, and you're probably using your credit card for your regular monthly expenses. And again, that goes back to budget, right? Making sure we're living within our means. But in this scenario, if you're 98%, that sort of tells the creditor, the person who's considering lending you money, that you probably don't have a backup. So when you get hit with a financial curveball, like the 34-day government shutdown in 2018, or the pandemic in 2020, and someone loses their job or something like that, you probably are going to not be able to pay your credit debt. So if you have that high of utilization, what's going to happen is the FICO score is going to lower your score, so you're not that attractive of a credit prospect. Okay, so our goal in terms of credit utilization is to be below 30, ideally below 20, and it simply means using 20% of your available credit. In my example, it's 20% of the 10,000, so you've charged 2,000 of the 10,000. Okay, so the biggest component, payment history, 35%. Second biggest component, credit utilization, 30%. Third biggest component is length of credit history. That's 15%. So those three components, 35, 30, 15, that's 80% of your overall credit score, your FICO score. Okay, so into this credit history. Here's the story with credit history. They want to see that you understand what credit is, you know how to use it, and you've been doing it a long time. The longer, the better. So let's say you were 19 years old and you got your first credit card, and now you're 39 years old and you still have that credit card, but 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you got another credit card. And you're thinking, maybe I should close out the card I got at 19. Don't. Keep that card. You might not want to use it for whatever reason, but keep the card open and periodically service it by buying a tank of gas and just paying it off. That keeps the card open, keeps it active, and it reflects in terms of how long you have credit. If you close it, it's going to reduce the amount of time you have credit, even though you had credit much longer. And that's going to reduce your score somewhat. Okay? So that's length of credit history. Then the other two are pretty straightforward. 10% represents how much new credit you have. So if you're going out applying for credit all the time, that's going to be a ding, and that affects your score, 10% of your overall FICO score. And then the last is types of credit. Types of credit would be, secured credit, secured by something tangible, like secured by a car, secured by a house, right? Versus unsecured, which is basically secured by my promise. So a credit card is unsecured. So if I make the payments and everything is fine, if I don't make the payments, they're not going to come and get the phone I bought. Versus a secured card, I made the payments on my car, and if I stop making the payments on my car or my house, they're going to track me down and take my car, and they're going to file foreclosure to take my house. Okay, so that's secured and unsecured, and then, so that's the types of credit, and then the newness of credit. So quick summary, 35% of your FICO score is payment history. How do you keep your financial promises? 30% is credit utilization. How much of your overall credit are you using? And you want to be below 30, maybe 20%. 15% is length of credit. Keep your credit cards open, right? You don't need 30 credit cards, but if you have an older card, if you have 15 credit cards, close some of those, but try to keep some of the older ones for your credit history. And then new credit. Don't apply for credit all the time. Just because they send you offers, that doesn't mean you should apply for credit. And then types of credit, revolving, installment, secured, etc. Those things represent 100% of your FICO score. Okay, now, what are some of the tips? What can I do in terms of my credit score? Before I talk about that, let's talk a little bit about the credit report. Now, you know there are 3 credit reporting agencies. Hopefully you do, maybe you don't. So it's TransUnion, it's Equifax, and Experian, right? Those are the credit reporting agencies. So, and by the way, these credit reporting agencies, they don't inspect the veracity of the information that comes in. They are not doing any due diligence to make sure it's correct information. All they're taking is Macy's sent something to them in your name saying you didn't pay, they put it in the file. Period. There's no investigation, there's no check. That's not their job. Their job is to gather the information. It's our job to make sure it's correct. So here's what you do. 2 things. Once a year minimum, go to annualcreditreport.com and order a copy of your credit report. That report is free. That program was set up 12 years ago, 2008, to make sure people can get their credit report without having to enroll in some monthly payment or whatever. Again, it's annualcreditreport.com. Get a copy of your credit report. Once you get that copy of your credit report, sit down Saturday morning, cup of coffee, cup of tea, and Go through every single item on the credit report. Make sure your name is spelled correctly. Make sure the addresses there are your addresses. Make sure the phone number is correct. Make sure the last four social is correct. If your name is John Smith, there are 20,000 of you in America. So the credit report you get may not be yours. You want to make sure, and it may be yours, but that John Smith may have 2 or 3 items on your credit report. So you want to go through and say, yep, that's me, that's my address, that's my old address, that's my phone number, and make sure all that's clean. Then you're going to go through each one of the entries. There's my Macy's, there's my this, it was paid off. Oh, I did pay it off, but it says it wasn't paid off. Okay, so we're going to dispute that. So I'm going to go through every single thing. And then what I'm going to do, I can actually do an online dispute through any one of the credit bureaus. And I'll go there and say, okay, that's not me, or that was paid off. And then the credit bureaus have 30 days to check. So they're going to go to, I keep saying Macy's, but whoever, they're going to go to Macy's and say, okay, did John Smith buy this? Did John Smith pay it off? Is this the John Smith? And if they confirm it is you, then it stays on your report. But a lot of times they'll find it wasn't you, it wasn't your account. It gets removed and you'll see your score go up. They have 30 days to take care of that and give you a notice saying what happened. Okay, so as we go through this credit report, we want to make sure every single thing there is ours. And we want to get rid of any extra stuff that shouldn't be there. So that's the credit report. And you can get information on that online. Go to annualcreditreport.com. Another thing, you want to look at your credit score. And a simple way to do that, a lot of our credit cards and bank accounts now have that ability. But if you don't have that, just go to Credit Karma. Pull it up, boom. That tells you your score. Remember the parameters I said. You want to be ideally in a higher area, in 7s and 800s. And by the way, at 740, it's when you pretty much qualify for all the great promotions. So if you see a commercial saying you get 0 interest, depending on your credit score, at 740, you get the 0 interest. At 700, you may have to pay 3%. In the 650s, you may pay 8%. In the 500s, you may pay 15%. That's why it's very, very important to make sure those numbers are right. Okay, so we talked about the 5 components of the FICO score. We talked about getting the credit report. We talked about getting the credit score. Okay, so those are the major things you want to be aware of in reference to credit. So we have covered a lot of stuff. So we talked about what are the 5 key components of the FICO score. We've talked about the credit reporting bureaus in terms of how they don't check what's sent until you request that they check what's sent. So a lot of us, 10-15% of the credit reports have inaccurate information. So it's on us every year. Annualcreditreport.com. Go there, get a copy of your credit report, review it, and make sure it says what it should say. And when it doesn't, you dispute it. So this is part 1 of our discussion around credit. My name is William K. Wesley, and be sure to tell your friends and share this video with your friends. Be sure to subscribe and put your techniques in the comment section. Tell us what you do to address credit. Tell us how you're handling this. Tell us if you've had problems in credit and what you ended up doing. Also, go online, get a copy of my book, go to Amazon.com. This book is called Full Life Balance, and this is a full life balance financial coaching session. Full life balance covers 5 things. Right, our spiritual key, our emotional key, our professional key. And in the professional key, we talk about budget and credit and investments and even estate planning. So in future videos, we're going to do credit part 2. Then we're also going to do some more around debt. We're going to spend some time in investments and retirement planning. Tell you a little bit about estate planning and virtually any consumer related financial topic. I'm going to shoot a video out to you to hopefully help you and your friends move this thing forward. So we thank you for your time, and as always, I want you to be well, work smart, have fun, and live better every day.